God's chosen one. 8 gifts God gives you for using their sexual energy, divinely vertical bar ElioraPath. Why do you feel like a stranger in your own skin? Why does every relationship leave you emptier than before? Why does your body crave what your spirit rejects? Listen carefully. Chosen one. You didn't stumble upon this message by accident. You didn't click here because of some algorithm or trending topic. Heaven itself pressed pause on the noise of this world, just to whisper something sacred into your spirit. This moment right now was written in eternity before your first breath. And if you feel chills running down your spine, if tears are welling up in your eyes, if there's a trembling in your chest that you can't explain, that's not emotion, that's recognition. Your soul is remembering something it thought was lost forever. For decades, the enemy has convinced you that your sexual energy is either your greatest shame or your fleeting pleasure. But what if I told you that the very force you've been taught to suppress or sin with is actually the sacred fire God designed to forge your destiny? This message is not a speech, it's a scroll, and you've just broken the seal. What you're about to receive has been hidden in the vaults of heaven, waiting for this exact moment when your spirit was ready to handle the weight of this truth. Before we go deeper, I want to pause and say thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let heaven know you're ready. Right now, something is shifting in the spiritual realm. Can you feel it? That stirring in your belly, that quickening in your pulse, that's not anxiety, that's activation. God is about to reveal 8 sacred gifts that unlock when you learn to honor, not abuse, the creative fire He placed within you. If you feel this truth awakening in your spirit right now, if something deep inside you is saying, "This is why I'm here," comment 111 below. That's not just a number. That's your spiritual alignment with this divine moment. It's your signal to heaven that you're ready to receive what's been waiting for you. Because what you're about to discover won't just change how you see your body, it will revolutionize how you walk through this world. You are seconds away from understanding why your energy has felt so scattered, why your relationships have felt so empty, and why your dreams have felt so distant. The scroll is open, the seal is broken, and your transformation begins now. How many nights have you laid awake, feeling like your own body was betraying you? How many times have you whispered prayers for forgiveness, for desires you never asked to have? How many decades have you carried the crushing weight of shame, believing that the very fire God placed within you was your greatest curse? Dear chosen one, I need you to hear something that might shatter everything you've been taught. For 70, 80, even 90 years, the church, society, even your own family convinced you that sexual energy was something to suppress or sin with. They taught you to see it as the enemy of holiness, the destroyer of souls, the pathway to damnation. But what if I told you they got it backwards? What if the very force you've spent a lifetime fighting was actually meant to build nations, not break you? Listen to me carefully. In Genesis 1:28, God didn't whisper to Adam and Eve. He commanded them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it." That wasn't just about having children. That was about creative dominion. That was about taking the sacred fire within and using it to transform the world. The Hebrew word for subdue is kabash. It means to conquer, to bring under control, to make productive. God wasn't telling them to suppress their creative energy. He was telling them to harness it, direct it, consecrate it for His glory. But somewhere along the way, we lost the sacred understanding. We turned God's gift into guilt, We transformed divine fire into dirty shame. And for generations, beautiful souls like you have suffered under this devastating lie. Think about your own journey, beloved. How many relationships did you enter feeling broken before you even began? How many times did you give pieces of yourself away, not out of love, but out of the belief that you were already damaged goods? How many years did you waste believing that your body was the enemy of your spirit? I see you there, nodding, tears streaming down your face. Because you know this pain intimately. You've carried it like a stone in your chest for decades. The shame of desires that felt too strong. The guilt of pleasure that felt too good. The confusion of a body that craved what your spirit was taught to reject. But here's what Satan never wanted you to discover. The very thing you were taught to be ashamed of was your birthright power. David understood this when he danced before the Lord with all his might in 2 Samuel 6:14. He wasn't just expressing joy. He was demonstrating what happens when sacred energy flows unashamed through a consecrated vessel. His wife Michal despised him for it, called it undignified, inappropriate. But God saw a man whose entire being was aligned with divine purpose. You see, dear one, sexual energy isn't separate from spiritual energy. It's the same force, the same creative fire that brought forth planets and stars, that breathed life into Adam's nostrils, that parted the Red Sea. When that energy is scattered through shame, guilt, or misuse, it becomes chaos. But when it's gathered, purified, and directed, it becomes the very power of creation itself. But I know what you're thinking. It's too late for me. I'm too old. I've made too many mistakes. I've wasted too many years. Stop right there. Look at Abraham. God called him to father nations when he was 100 years old. Look at Moses. He didn't even begin his real ministry until he was 80. Look at Anna the prophetess in Luke 2:36. She was 84 when she recognized the Christ child, and her recognition changed the course of history. Your age isn't disqualification, it's divine timing. Every mistake you've made, every year you've wandered, every moment you've felt broken has been preparing you for this revelation. Because now, stripped of youthful illusions and worldly distractions, you're finally ready to handle the weight of this truth. But here's the question that will determine the rest of your days. What happens when that same energy that brought you shame is finally consecrated instead of consumed? What happens when you stop fighting the fire within and start directing it? What happens when you realize that every urge you've battled, every desire you've buried, every passion you've denied was actually God trying to get your attention, trying to show you the raw material of your destiny? In 1 Corinthians 6:19, Paul doesn't say your body is evil. He says, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit?" A temple isn't a place of shame, it's a place of sacred power. It's where heaven touches earth. It's where the infinite meets the intimate. And right now, as you sit there listening to these words, something is awakening in that temple. Something that's been sleeping for decades is stirring. You can feel it, can't you? That warmth spreading through your chest, that quickening in your spirit, that sense that you're on the edge of understanding something that will change everything. Because you are, beloved. You're about to discover 8 gifts, 8 divine endowments that God releases when His chosen ones finally understand how to honor the sacred fire within them, not suppress it, not sin with it, but consecrate it. And the first gift, the foundation of all the others, is about to revolutionize how you see yourself, your body, and your calling. But before we unlock that first gift, I need you to make a choice. Will you continue carrying the shame that's been crushing your spirit for decades? Or are you finally ready to step into the sacred understanding that's been waiting for you your entire life? But before we unveil the first gift, I need to ask you something that might sting. When was the last time you felt truly in control of your own desires? When did you last look temptation in the eye and walk away without flinching, without shame, without regret? If you can't remember, you're not alone. And if that question made your stomach tighten, that's exactly why you're here. Listen, chosen one. The world has sold you a lie so destructive, so soul-crushing, that entire generations have forgotten what true power looks like. They told you that self-control is oppression. They whispered that denying your flesh is denying your freedom. They convinced you that restraint is the enemy of joy. But what if I told you they got it backwards? What if the very thing they called weakness is actually your greatest weapon? What if the discipline they mocked is the gateway to divine authority? What if the self-control you've been avoiding is the key that unlocks every door heaven wants to open for you? Because here's the shocking truth nobody wants you to know. Every addiction you're battling, every urge that controls you, every moment you feel powerless against your own flesh is not evidence of your humanity. It's evidence of stolen authority. Authority that belongs to you, but you've handed it over to appetites that were never meant to rule you. Solomon knew this. In Proverbs 25-28, he declared something that should terrify every person walking this earth. A man without self-control is like a city without walls. Think about that image for a moment. Picture a city with no protection, no boundaries, no defense. Every enemy can waltz right in. Every predator has access. Every destructive force can pillage and plunder at will. That's what happens when you lose control of your sexual energy. You become defenseless territory. And the enemy doesn't need an army to conquer you. He just needs an appetite. But God didn't create you to be conquered. He created you to be a fortress. He designed you to be unshakable, unmovable, unconquerable. But that fortress isn't built with walls of stone. It's built with walls of discipline. Discipline is not denial. It is divine defense. You are not suppressing when you choose restraint. You are sealing power for divine assignment. Every time you say no to what your flesh demands, you're saying yes to what your spirit requires. Every moment you resist the temporary, you're investing in the eternal. And here's what the enemy desperately doesn't want you to discover. The more hidden power you hold, the more heaven trusts you to carry open influence. Think about this logically. Would you give a loaded weapon to someone who can't control their trigger finger? Would you entrust nuclear codes to someone who's impulsive and unpredictable? Would you place a kingdom in the hands of someone who's enslaved to their own appetites? Neither would God. This is why your breakthrough has been delayed. This is why doors that should be open remain locked. This is why influence that should be yours stays just out of reach. Not because God is withholding, but because you're not yet ready to carry the weight of what He wants to give you. But that changes today. Because supreme self-control isn't about becoming a monk or living in denial. It's about becoming so aligned with your divine purpose that lesser things lose their grip on you. It's about discovering that the power to create life, when properly stewarded, becomes the power to create destiny. Consider David, a man after God's own heart, yet he fell to sexual temptation with Bathsheba. And what followed? Murder, deception, family chaos, and a kingdom nearly torn apart. One moment of lost control cost him years of peace, damaged his legacy, and brought consequences that rippled through generations. But then consider Joseph, faced with Potiphar's wife, a woman of beauty and influence, offering herself freely with no witnesses and no consequences. He could have taken what was offered. He could have satisfied his flesh. Instead, he chose restraint. And that choice, that moment of supreme self-control, positioned him to save nations and preserve bloodlines. The difference wasn't their humanity, the difference was their discipline. So let me ask you directly, what is your sexual energy currently building? Is it creating legacy or destroying it? Is it forging character or fracturing it? Is it preparing you for promotion or keeping you trapped in patterns that diminish your divine potential? Because every ounce of energy you invest in momentary pleasure is energy stolen from eternal purpose. Every time you scatter what should be sacred, you're weakening the very force God designed to establish your destiny. But here's the miraculous news. The moment you decide to reclaim control, the moment you choose to honor rather than abuse this sacred fire, heaven begins to respond. Angels take notice, principalities are put on alert, and God Himself begins to prepare you for assignments that require the kind of spiritual authority that only comes through consecrated discipline. This isn't about perfection, this is about direction. This isn't about never feeling desire. This is about never being enslaved by it. And if you've ever resisted what your flesh wanted, if you've ever chosen the narrow path when the wide one beckoned, if you've ever walked away from temptation even when every fiber of your being screamed to stay, type warrior below. You've already begun your training. You're already building the fortress. You're already demonstrating to heaven that you can be trusted with power. But supreme self-control is just the beginning. Because when you master the fire within, something extraordinary begins to radiate from you. Something others can feel but can't explain. An unshakable magnetism that doesn't come from performance, but from presence. And that presence, chosen one, changes everything about how the world responds to you. Now that your self-control has begun to forge you into something unbreakable, something else starts to happen. Something the world can't explain, but everyone can feel. Have you ever walked into a room and watched conversations stop? Have you ever noticed strangers staring at you, not with lust, but with something deeper, something that feels almost like reverence? That's not your imagination, chosen one. That's the second gift awakening within you. You see, when you stop pouring your sacred essence into empty vessels, when you cease scattering your life force like seed on concrete, something mystical begins to radiate from your very being. Your aura is not perfumate's holy oil. And just like the oil that anointed kings in ancient Israel, this invisible anointing marks you as royalty in a world full of pretenders. Listen carefully. People stare, stumble, admire not because of your looks, but because your spirit remembers Eden. Somewhere deep in their subconscious, they recognize what humanity looked like before the fall, before shame, before separation, before we forgot that we were made in the image of the Almighty Himself. Isaiah 61 verse 3 tells us that God gives us beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. When you consecrate your sexual energy, you literally become a walking testimony of this scripture. The ashes of your past become beauty, the mourning of your mistakes becomes joy, and that heavy spirit you've carried for years, it transforms into praise that radiates from every pore. But here's what's shocking about this magnetism. You don't enter rooms, you shift atmospheres. The very air changes when you arrive. Why? Because you're no longer leaking energy through lustful thoughts, guilty shame, or desperate validation, seeking. Instead, you've become a sealed vessel, and sealed vessels carry pressure. Think about Keanu Reeves for a moment. This man doesn't chase fame, doesn't perform for cameras, doesn't reveal every detail of his private life on social media. He moves through Hollywood with an almost monastic presence. And what's the result? People are drawn to him like moths to flame. They can't explain it, but they feel something different about his energy. That's magnetism without marketing. Chosen one. Or consider Mother Teresa, a small woman in simple robes, yet world leaders would fly thousands of miles just to be in her presence. What did she possess that billionaires and presidents were missing? It wasn't charisma training or public relations. It was consecrated energy. She had learned to channel her life force entirely into divine service. And that singular focus created an aura so powerful that even hardened politicians would weep in her presence. But let me ask you something that might sting. How many relationships have you entered where you felt like you had to perform? How many times have you walked into a room feeling invisible, desperate for someone to notice you? How many nights have you stared at your reflection wondering why you don't feel attractive, wondering why you don't command the respect you see others receive? Here's the brutal truth. When your sexual energy is scattered, when you're constantly leaking power through fantasies, casual encounters, or even just lustful thoughts, you become spiritually anemic. You may look fine on the outside, but your spiritual presence becomes weak. People sense it. They may not know what they're feeling, but they unconsciously categorize you as someone who doesn't command respect. But when you reverse this process, when you begin to gather and consecrate that same energy, something extraordinary happens. Proverbs tells us that the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. When your spirit is no longer flickering from energy loss, it begins to burn bright, and people are drawn to light like they're drawn to nothing else. This is why Jesus could walk into any situation and immediately command attention, not because he was loud or flashy, but because he carried the full presence of divinity in a human vessel. His energy was completely consecrated, completely aligned with the Father's will. And that created a magnetism so powerful that people would leave their jobs, their families, their entire lives, just to follow him. Now, I need you to understand something crucial. This magnetism is not about manipulation. It's not about getting people to do what you want. It's about becoming who God intended you to be before the world taught you to fragment yourself. When your energy is whole, when your sexual force is flowing in divine alignment rather than draining through carnal channels, you naturally become irresistible. But here's the question that will determine your destiny. Are you ready to be that powerful? Are you prepared for the responsibility that comes with this kind of presence? Because when you carry true spiritual magnetism, people will confess their deepest secrets to you. They'll seek your counsel. They'll want to be around you not because you're trying to impress them, but because your very presence reminds them of something they've lost. This gift isn't given to those who seek attention. It's bestowed upon those who seek alignment. And as you continue to walk this path of sexual consecration, you'll discover that the magnetism grows stronger. Your words carry more weight. Your silence speaks volumes. Your very existence becomes a sermon. But with great power comes great temptation, and that's exactly what we need to discuss next. Because the third gift God gives to the sexually disciplined is so powerful, it can literally bend reality to your will. Now that your self-control has been forged in the fires of discipline, and your magnetism is drawing heaven's attention, we arrive at the third sacred gift. And this one, chosen one, this one will shatter everything you thought you knew about how quickly God can move in your life. Sexual energy is creative fire. When scattered its lust, when harnessed its legacy, listen carefully. That same force that creates life in the womb, that same divine spark that brought forth nations and empires, that same creative energy that God breathed into Adam's nostrils, is flowing through your body right now. But here's the question that will haunt you tonight. Are you building with it or bleeding it away? For 70 years, maybe 80 if you're blessed, you've watched other people's prayers get answered while yours seem to echo in empty rooms. You've seen doors open for others while yours remained locked. You've witnessed miracles happen to everyone except you. And deep in your heart, in that place where doubt whispers loudest, you've wondered, God, have you forgotten my name? But what if I told you that every scattered moment, every wasted drop of that creative fire was the very thing standing between you and your breakthrough? What if your manifestation wasn't delayed by God's timing, but by your energy's bleeding? Think about this, dear chosen one. Right now, as I speak these words, There are people half your age manifesting dreams you've prayed about for decades. How is that possible? How can someone with less experience, less wisdom, less years of faithfulness receive what you've been waiting for? The answer will shock you. They're not more faithful than you. They're not more deserving than you. But they've learned something you're just now discovering. Creative energy, when preserved and directed, becomes manifestation fuel. Scripture tells us in Habakkuk 2-3, "For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay." But notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say sit passively and hope. It says the revelation has an appointed time, and that time is activated by your alignment. You don't chase blessings anymore. You become the force that attracts them. Let me paint you a picture that will change everything. Most people are like broken fire hydrants, spraying their creative force in every direction. They wake up and immediately leak energy through worry, through mindless entertainment, through sexual fantasies that leave them empty. Then they wonder why their prayers feel powerless, why their dreams feel distant, why their manifestations crawl at the speed of a wounded snail. But you, chosen one, you are learning to become something different. You are becoming a focused laser beam of divine intention. When every ounce of your creative fire is preserved, purified, and pointed toward your God-given purpose, reality itself begins to bend. Most people are praying while leaking power, but you are building a dam of destiny. Here's what happens when you stop scattering that sacred energy. Your thoughts become clearer, your prayers become sharper, your faith becomes magnetic. Suddenly, opportunities don't just appear, they chase you down the street. Doors don't just open, they swing wide before you even knock. Resources don't just trickle in, they flood your life like a divine tsunami. But I need you to understand something that will either terrify you or set you free. This level of manifestation comes with a price. It requires you to say no to everything that drains your creative fire. Every mindless scroll through social media, every moment wasted on empty entertainment, every casual conversation that leads nowhere, every sexual thought that steals from your future. Are you willing to pay that price? Are you ready to live like your energy is liquid gold? Because, dear one, it is. The prophet Joel declared, "And afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions." Notice that? Your old men will dream dreams. God isn't done with you. Your manifestation season isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. But here's where it gets controversial. Here's where the rubber meets the road. Every time you waste that creative energy, every time you let it leak through lust or laziness, you're not just delaying your blessing, you're voting against your own destiny. You're choosing temporary pleasure over permanent breakthrough. How many more years are you willing to wait? How many more prayers are you going to whisper into what feels like empty air? How much longer will you watch others receive what God promised you? The time for excuses is over. The time for scattered living is finished. Your creative fire is too precious to waste on anything less than legacy. Your sexual energy is too sacred to squander on temporary thrills. Right now, this very moment, you have a choice. You can continue living like your energy doesn't matter, praying weak prayers while leaking divine power. Or you can become what heaven has been waiting for, a focused, fierce, unstoppable force of manifestation. Type "I build" below if you're ready to stop chasing and start magnetizing. Because, chosen one, when you build that dam of destiny, when you harness every drop of creative fire, when you align your energy with your calling, manifestation doesn't crawl anymore, it explodes. But as your manifestation power awakens, as reality begins to shift around your focused energy, something else begins to happen, something that most people never see coming. Your spiritual vision, that divine antenna God placed within you, begins to sharpen like never before. Chosen one, let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. When was the last time you walked into a room and instantly knew something was wrong before a single word was spoken? When did you last look into someone's eyes and see the lie behind their smile? When did your gut scream danger while everyone else saw safety? You've been living with a gift you never understood, a spiritual antenna that picks up frequencies others can't even imagine. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. Every time you've misused your sexual energy, every moment you've scattered your sacred fire into lust and fantasy, you've been jamming your own signal. You don't just see with eyes, dear one, you see with your spirit's antenna. And right now, that antenna has been clouded by decades of spiritual static. Think about it. How many times have you ignored that inner knowing? How many red flags did you dismiss because your physical desires overruled your spiritual discernment? How many toxic people did you let into your sacred space because lust had fogged the lens of your perception? The word tells us in 1 John 2:20, "You have an anointing from the Holy One, and you know all things." All things, chosen one. Not some things, not the obvious things. All things. But this knowing, this divine perception, it requires a clear channel. Lust fogs the lens. Purity sharpens the signal. Every time you've given your sexual energy away carelessly, every moment you've fed the flesh instead of the spirit, you've been dimming your spiritual sight. It's like trying to see through a windshield covered in mud. The road is still there, but you can't navigate safely. But when you begin to consecrate that energy, when you stop pouring your life force into temporary pleasures and start channeling it into eternal purpose, something miraculous happens. The fog lifts, the static clears, and suddenly you're seeing with heaven's eyes. Have you ever felt something off before someone spoke a word? That's not paranoia, beloved. That's perception. That's your spirit recognizing what your mind hasn't processed yet. That's the gift of spiritual vision awakening in you. But here's where it gets dangerous for the kingdom of darkness. When a chosen one starts seeing clearly, when they can discern spirits, read intentions, and perceive the unseen realm, they become a threat to every demonic strategy. You stop falling for the same traps. You stop being deceived by familiar spirits wearing new faces. Jesus said in Matthew 6:22, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light." Your spiritual eyes, chosen one, when they're clean, when they're focused, when they're not clouded by the smoke of lust, your entire being becomes illuminated. Think about the last time you made a decision based purely on physical attraction. How did that work out for you? Think about the relationships you entered because someone looked good, but your spirit was screaming warnings you chose to ignore. How much pain could you have avoided if you'd trusted your spiritual vision instead of your physical desires? The enemy has spent years convincing you that your intuition is unreliable, that your spiritual discernment is just anxiety or imagination. But what if I told you that every time you've said, "I should have trusted my gut," you were actually saying, "I should have trusted my spiritual vision"? When you begin to honor your sexual energy as sacred, when you stop scattering it and start concentrating it, your spiritual perception doesn't just improve, it becomes supernatural. You start seeing people's hearts before they reveal them. You discern motives before they're spoken. You recognize wolves in sheep's clothing from a mile away. And this gift terrifies the enemy, because a chosen one with clear spiritual vision can't be manipulated. They can't be seduced by counterfeits. They can't be led astray by false prophets or toxic relationships. They see through the illusion straight to the truth. But here's what happens when your vision clears. The world starts looking different. People you thought were friends reveal themselves as energy vampires. Opportunities you thought were blessings expose themselves as distractions. And dreams you thought were from God show themselves to be products of your own wounded desires. This is why so many people resist spiritual clarity. They're afraid of what they might see. They're comfortable with the fog because it allows them to live in denial. But you, chosen one, you're being called to see clearly, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Proverbs 27:6 says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend." Sometimes spiritual vision shows you painful truths about people you love. Sometimes it reveals that the very things you've been chasing are the things destroying you. But would you rather live in comfortable deception or uncomfortable truth? Your spiritual vision is about to show you who's really for you and who's been using you. It's going to reveal which doors lead to destiny and which ones lead to destruction. It's going to expose the difference between divine connections and demonic distractions. Are you ready for that level of clarity? Are you prepared to see your life, your relationships, your choices through heaven's lens instead of hell's filter? Because once your spiritual vision sharpens, there's no going back to blindness. Once you see clearly, you can never unsee the truth. And the question becomes, will you have the courage to act on what your spirit is showing you? This is the crossroads, beloved. Continue living with clouded vision, making decisions based on lust and emotion, or step into the clarity that comes when your energy is consecrated and your perception is purified. The choice is yours, but understand this: your destiny is waiting on the other side of your spiritual sight, and the enemy is doing everything he can to keep you blind to it. So what will it be? Will you keep stumbling through life with fogged spiritual vision, or are you ready to see with the eyes of the Spirit and walk in the power of divine perception? Because what you see next will determine everything that happens after. Dear chosen one, look in the mirror right now. What do you see staring back at you? Do you see the vibrant person you once were? Or do you see someone who's been drained by decades of giving your sacred energy to the wrong places, the wrong people, the wrong habits? Let me ask you something that might sting. When was the last time someone stopped you on the street and said, "You're glowing"? When was the last time you felt truly alive in your own skin, not just existing, not just surviving, but radiating life from the inside out? Here's the brutal truth most pastors won't tell you. Your body is keeping score. Every time you've misused your sexual energy, every time you've poured your essence into empty wells, every time you've allowed your sacred fire to be scattered instead of sanctified, your cells have been crying out for restoration. But tonight, I'm here to tell you about the fifth gift that God releases when you learn to honor, not abuse, the creative power within you. It's called glowing vitality, and it's about to change everything you thought you knew about aging, about energy, about what it means to carry the presence of the living God in mortal flesh. Listen to what Isaiah declared over your life 2,000 years ago. Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Isaiah 40:31. Did you catch that word? Renew, not repair, not replace, but renew. God is talking about cellular regeneration, divine restoration, supernatural vitality flowing through your very DNA. Your face carries the freshness of Eden's breeze. That's not poetry, that's prophecy. When Adam and Eve walked with God in the cool of the day, their bodies radiated the glory of their Creator. They didn't need skincare routines or anti-aging treatments because they were connected to the source of all life. And chosen one, that same source lives inside you. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. When your essence stops leaking, your body begins to bloom. Think about it. A flower that's constantly being uprooted, constantly being drained, constantly having its nutrients stolen, will wither and fade. But a flower that's planted in good soil, protected from parasites, fed by clean water, doesn't just survive, it flourishes, it glows. It becomes a testament to the life force flowing through it. How many years have you been wondering why you feel so tired, so drained, so much older than your actual age? How many mornings have you woken up feeling like you're running on empty before the day even begins? The answer isn't in a vitamin bottle or an energy drink. The answer is in understanding that you've been hemorrhaging your life force through spiritual wounds that only divine discipline can heal. This glow isn't vanity. It's evidence of divine chemistry inside your cells. When you stop wasting your sexual energy on momentary pleasures and start investing it in eternal purpose, something miraculous begins to happen. Your nervous system settles, your hormones balance, your skin begins to radiate, not because of expensive creams, but because the Spirit of God is literally transforming you from the inside out. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like. Imagine walking into a room and people immediately feeling drawn to your presence, not because of what you're wearing or how you've styled your hair, but because there's something alive about you that can't be manufactured or mimicked. Your eyes have a clarity that pierces through pretense. Your voice carries a weight that commands attention without demanding it. Your very breath seems to bring life into dead spaces. This isn't fantasy. This is the reality that awaits every chosen one who learns to guard their sacred energy like the treasure it is. When you stop giving your power away to people, habits, and desires that don't deserve it, that same power begins to work on your behalf, healing what was broken, restoring what was stolen, renewing what seemed lost forever. But here's the question that will determine your destiny. Are you ready to stop looking for life in all the wrong places and start drinking from the well that never runs dry? Are you ready to stop trying to fill the God-shaped void in your life with everything except God Himself? Because when you make that choice, when you finally say yes to divine discipline and no to spiritual drainage, the transformation isn't just internal. People will start asking you what you're doing differently. They'll want to know your secret. They'll sense something about you that they can't quite name but desperately crave for themselves. Your vitality becomes a testimony. Your energy becomes evangelism. Your very presence preaches a sermon about what happens when heaven and earth collide in human flesh. This is why the enemy has worked so hard to convince you that your sexual energy is either shameful or purely physical. He knows that when you discover its true purpose, when you learn to harness it for holy purposes, you become dangerous to his kingdom of darkness. The clock is ticking, chosen one. Every day you delay this transformation is another day your body ages unnecessarily. Another day your energy leaks away. Another day you settle for existing when you were created to radiate the very glory of God. But what happens when this divine vitality meets the sacred connections God has been preparing for you? What kind of relationships become possible when you're no longer desperate for validation but overflowing with divine life? But as these sacred gifts begin to activate in your life, something unexpected starts happening. People begin to disappear, not physically, but spiritually. That friend who used to call every week suddenly goes silent. That romantic connection that felt so promising just fades. That family member who once sought your advice now treats you like a stranger. And if you're experiencing this right now, if you're wondering why your phone feels quieter, why invitations have stopped coming, why conversations feel more strained, listen carefully. This isn't punishment, this is purification. When your energy becomes sacred, casual people fall away. Think about it. When you stop operating from desperation, when you're no longer willing to compromise your peace for company, when your standards rise from the basement to the penthouse suddenly, the people who were feeding off your brokenness can't stomach your wholeness. Purity repels what only wanted access to your body, but couldn't reach your spirit. Dear chosen one, do you remember that relationship that left you feeling drained? That friendship where you gave and gave, but somehow always left empty? That romantic connection where you felt more lonely together than you did alone? Your spirit was trying to tell you something, but you silenced it, thinking you were being too picky, too difficult, too much. But what if you weren't too much? What if they were too little? The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 15:33, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good character." But here's what the church forgot to teach you. Sometimes bad company doesn't look bad. Sometimes it comes dressed in charm, wrapped in familiarity, speaking your language, knowing your weaknesses. Sometimes the very people draining your energy are the ones who claim to love you most. How many times have you walked away from a conversation feeling heavier than when you started? How many times have you given your heart, your body, your time to someone who treated it like a rental car? How many times have you lowered your voice, dimmed your light, shrunk your dreams just to make someone else comfortable? That wasn't love. That was spiritual vampirism. And now that your energy is becoming consecrated, now that your frequency is rising, those energy vampires can't feed anymore. The buffet is closed. The free access has been revoked. And they're angry about it. But here's the revelation that will set you free. That heartbreak wasn't rejection. It was realignment. Every person who walked away when you started walking upright, every relationship that crumbled when you stopped accepting crumbs, every friend who disappeared when you stopped being their emotional dumping ground, they weren't leaving you, they were revealing themselves. God was cleaning house before the blessing arrived. Because here's what heaven knows that you're just discovering. You can't carry new wine in old wineskins. You can't build a cathedral on a foundation of compromise. And you can't step into your divine destiny while dragging people who don't believe in your calling. The loneliness you feel right now, it's not emptiness. It's space being created for something sacred. Think about Moses. When God called him to lead Israel out of Egypt, do you think everyone supported him? His own people questioned him, mocked him, wanted to stone him. But God didn't call Moses to a popularity contest. He called him to a purpose. Or consider Jesus himself. As his ministry intensified, as his message became more radical, people walked away. John 6:66 tells us, "From this time many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him." Even his closest friends had moments of doubt, betrayal, abandonment. But did Jesus chase them? Did he water down his message to keep the crowd? Did he compromise his calling to maintain his connections? Absolutely not. Because when you're walking in divine alignment, you attract what matches your frequency, not what matches your loneliness. And right now, as your sexual energy is being transmuted into spiritual power, as your standards are rising, as your discernment is sharpening, God is orchestrating a divine exchange. He's removing the counterfeit to make room for the covenant. The mentor who will pour into you without hidden agendas. The partner who will celebrate your light instead of trying to dim it. The friends who will pray for you behind your back instead of gossiping about you. The community that will see your calling and say, "How can we help?" instead of, "Who do you think you are?" These connections are coming, but they can't arrive while your life is cluttered with people who never had your best interests at heart. So, if you've been ghosted, abandoned, misunderstood, or written off as you've grown stronger, type divinely protected below, because that's exactly what you are. God saw what they really wanted from you, and he said, "Not on my watch." Your energy is too precious to be wasted on people who can't appreciate the sacred fire you carry. Your calling is too important to be dimmed by those who prefer you dimmed. Your destiny is too valuable to be delayed by people who were never meant to journey with you. The connections coming next won't just tolerate your transformation, they'll celebrate it. They won't just accept your standards, they'll match them. They won't just understand your calling, they'll help you fulfill it. Because when iron sharpens iron, both blades become sharper. When eagles soar together, they reach heights impossible alone. And as these divine connections begin to manifest in your life, you'll understand why God had to clear the room first. Because what's coming next requires a different caliber of character surrounding you. How many nights have you laid in bed, your mind racing like a freight train through Grand Central Station? How many decisions have you second-guessed until paralysis set in? How many times have you felt like a prisoner in your own thoughts, scattered, anxious, pulled in 1,000 directions by desires you can't even name? Listen to me, chosen one. This mental chaos isn't a character flaw. It's not because you're weak or broken. It's because your sacred energy has been bleeding out through 1,000 tiny wounds, leaving your mind vulnerable to every passing storm. But something miraculous happens when you reclaim that power. When your urges no longer rule you, your mind becomes a holy sanctuary, not a battlefield, a sanctuary, a place where God's voice echoes clearly, where wisdom rises above the noise, where peace isn't just a feeling, it's your permanent address. You see, most people believe peace means the absence of problems. They think serenity comes when life gets easier, when the bills are paid, when relationships are smooth, when health is perfect. But that's not peace, that's just a temporary pause between storms. True peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding, is clarity in the chaos. It's having a mind so centered, so focused, so anchored in divine purpose that you can stand in the middle of a hurricane and still hear the whisper of the Almighty. Be still and know that I am God, the psalmist writes. Not be still when everything is quiet. Be still, period. In the noise, in the pressure, in the uncertainty. Because when your sexual energy stops scattering your mental focus, when it consolidates into spiritual fuel, something profound happens to your thought life. You stop being tossed by every wind of doctrine, every opinion, every fear, every what-if scenario that used to consume your nights. You're no longer tossed by desire, you are now led by design. God's design. His blueprint for your mind, your focus, your inner world. Think about this. When was the last time you made a decision without second-guessing yourself for weeks? When was the last time you really knew what you were supposed to do next? That clarity isn't luck. It's what happens when your energy stops leaking through mental static and starts powering divine discernment. I'm talking about laser focus that cuts through confusion like light through darkness. The kind of mental clarity that makes complex decisions simple. Not because life gets easier, but because your perspective gets higher. You begin to see patterns others miss. You sense solutions before problems fully form. You move with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're being led by something greater than their own understanding. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. This kind of peace makes you dangerous. When you're no longer controlled by emotional chaos, when your mind is sharp and your spirit is calm, you become unstoppable. You stop being reactive and become responsive. You stop being driven by fear and start being drawn by faith. Jesus himself demonstrated this. In the middle of a raging storm that had grown men terrified, he slept peacefully in the boat. Not because he was exhausted, because he was centered. His energy wasn't scattered by fear or anxiety. His mind was so focused on his Father's will that even nature's fury couldn't disturb his inner sanctuary. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives, he said. The world gives temporary relief. God gives permanent refuge. The world gives distraction from problems. God gives clarity through problems. And this is what happens when you stop pouring your sacred energy into scattered desires and start concentrating it into divine purpose. Your thoughts align, your focus sharpens, Your decision-making becomes swift and sure because you're no longer operating from confusion, you're functioning from consecration. But let me ask you something that might shake you. How much of your anxiety comes from trying to control things that were never yours to control? How much mental energy do you waste worrying about outcomes you can't determine, people you can't change, futures you can't guarantee? When your sexual energy is sanctified, when it's no longer bleeding out through lust, fantasy, or casual connections, it creates a protective barrier around your mind. You become like a fortress, secure within your own walls, unshakable in your foundation. You will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you, Isaiah declares. Not perfect circumstances, perfect peace, in the middle of imperfect everything. Because your mind is no longer at the mercy of your circumstances, it's anchored to the unchanging nature of God. This is why the enemy fights so hard to keep your energy scattered. He knows that a focused believer is a force of nature. He knows that when your mind becomes a holy sanctuary, when your thoughts align with heaven's frequency, you become capable of things that defy human logic. You start hearing God's voice above the noise. You begin making decisions that seem risky to others but feel right to your spirit. You move with a timing that appears supernatural because it is. You're no longer operating on human schedules but on divine appointments. And here's the most beautiful part. This peace isn't something you have to fight for. It's something you grow into as you align your energy with God's design. Every time you choose restraint over impulse, every time you honor what's sacred instead of chasing what's temporary, you're building this sanctuary in your mind. But as this gift activates, as your focus becomes laser sharp and your peace becomes unshakable, something else begins to happen. The very atmosphere around you starts to shift. People notice there's something different about how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you move through challenges that would paralyze others. And that's when you realize this inner transformation is preparing you for something far greater than personal peace. It's preparing you for the final gift, the one that will change not just your inner world, but your entire destiny. Because when God sees that you've learned to govern your own spirit, when he witnesses that your mind has become his sanctuary, that's when he begins to trust you with something that will accelerate everything you've ever dreamed of. Are you ready to discover what happens when heaven recognizes that you've become a vessel it can trust with unlimited power? Chosen one, we've walked through 7 gifts together. But what I'm about to share with you now will shake the very foundation of how you understand God's timing in your life. Because there comes a moment, a sacred intersection, when heaven looks down at your vessel and declares, "This one is ready." Ready for what? Ready to carry power without worshipping it. Ready to receive influence without being corrupted by it. Ready to hold divine acceleration without your ego hijacking the blessing. And when that moment arrives, when the Almighty sees that your sexual energy is no longer leaking into lust, no longer scattered by distraction, no longer feeding the appetites of your flesh, something explosive happens in the spiritual realm. Acceleration begins. Not the kind of progress you've been grinding for your whole life. Not the slow climb up the ladder of human effort. I'm talking about supernatural speed, divine velocity, the kind of movement that makes people scratch their heads and ask, how did they go from there to here so fast? Listen to what God declares in Isaiah 60:22. When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen quickly. Quickly, chosen one, not eventually, not someday, quickly. But here's the question that's been haunting your midnight prayers. Why hasn't it happened yet? Why have you been circling the same mountain for years? Why do others seem to break through while you're still breaking down? The answer is going to cut deep, but it's going to set you free. Heaven has been waiting, not for your perfection, but for your consecration. God doesn't accelerate the undisciplined. He doesn't pour power into leaky vessels. He doesn't trust sacred assignments to scattered souls. But you've been doing the hidden work. You've been saying no when your flesh screamed yes. You've been guarding what the world told you to give away. You've been treating your body like the temple it is, instead of the playground the culture claims it should be. And now, right now, as you sit in this divine moment, heaven is making a declaration over your life. The waiting is over. When God sees that your vessel is consecrated, when He witnesses that you can handle temptation without falling, that you can carry desire without being controlled by it, acceleration begins. Doors that have been sealed for decades suddenly fling open. Connections you never pursued begin pursuing you. Resources you never asked for start showing up in your life like divine appointments. People begin saying yes to requests you haven't even made yet.